Thank you. Happy Thursday, everybody. Oh, yeah.
Regardless of if you love it or hate it, there's an undeniable draw to New York City. From its grandiose, towering skyscrapers, which tend to ignite the burning belief that anything is possible amongst both visitors and inhabitants, to its tough-as-nails hustle culture, which propels us on a never-ending hamster wheel of feeling as if we're just not doing enough. New York City has proven time and time again to be the place to establish oneself. And more than that, for centuries, it has served as the epicenter of great cultural, educational, financial progression, and expansion. Which is why it isn't difficult to conceptualize why so many people are drawn to this city. Despite it being the most expensive city to live in the United States, by the way, and also happens to rank at number 9 on a global scale, we still find people of all ages, racial, and cultural backgrounds backpacking their way to the not-so-promised land of incredibly high taxes and immensely gross living expenses. In order to understand the full scope of what it's like to live in New York City, you just have to be here, to be honest. And I'm ashamed, but not so much ashamed, to say that I've fallen privy to the Venus flytrap of the Big Apple. If you are new, I'm going to go ahead and suggest you check out my video on how I moved into my own apartment in New York City within 3 weeks. In that video, I provide you guys with a lot of apartment hunting do's and don'ts and just some pretty essential tips that I feel like most people haven't really covered. If that's something you're interested in, I highly recommend checking out that video. But since I've already moved in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how I managed to live in one of the most expensive cities in the world through good old-fashioned budgeting. And believe it or not, I'm able to do this with only one source of income. The first step in my budgeting process was to understand that I am not in this alone, in both a mental and literal sense. Yes, I have a roommate who is splitting the bills with me, but I also have friends and family who I know I can rely on if things ever really hit the fan. And to be noted, I understand that not everyone possesses this privilege, so please take into consideration that I am not telling you to go around asking for a handout, but what I am suggesting is for you to take advantage of your resources. If there's anything I've learned in the past few months, it's that 1, successful people utilize whatever resources are available to them. 2, your goals will be accomplished in a much more time and cost-efficient manner with the help of others. 3, there is nothing wrong with asking for help. And I make this point because although the concept of money is not really considered that taboo, at least in the YouTube space anymore, in real life it still is a very taboo subject. I don't know how much money my friends have in their savings account. I don't know how much they make an hour. We don't have discussions about this. And so that's why I think whenever the topic of finances is, brought up, people tend to shy away from it and feel uncomfortable because it is a stressful thing. As much as people demonize money, we do need it to survive in this world. And so I understand the psychological toll that money can have. You are not in this alone. Anytime I feel as if, this is overwhelming or it's too much, or I'm not really allocating my money where it needs to be going, or I have less money in my bank account than I expected to, or I feel like I'm off track with my budget, or whatever the case may be, I have to come back to a place of knowing that at the end of the day, everything will be okay. Managing your finances can be stressful, and that's okay. You're a human. It's important to be intentional with your money, which is why keeping these goals in mind, both long-term and short-term, is so important because it will keep you in alignment with your objective. when it comes down to budgeting, you want to set small, realistic milestones that will help keep you on track during this process. You want to ask yourself, where do I want to allocate most of my money? Do you have a side hustle? Have you recently started a business venture? Do you want a new car? Do you want to feed your online shopping addiction? Whatever the case may be, you want to be able to say you've saved X amount of money each month in order to do something that you enjoy. I know this seems a bit backwards because most people will tell you to prioritize your living expenses first. But I am a firm believer that because humans are such emotional beings, we need to have some sort of emotional tie to something in order to really prioritize it. Most of us don't have an emotional tie to our gas bill. We don't, right? But we do to that one night a week that we get to go out with our friends and drown our sorrows in booze. This creates an incentive to prioritize your budget, which is something that most people have a difficult time with because most of us see it as this stressful thing. Versus when you have something to look forward to, it makes you a little more excited about, reviewing your finances, We are going to tackle that task that absolutely no one likes doing, which is reviewing your bank account, unless it's payday. I don't mind looking at my bank account on payday, but you know what I mean? This one was probably the most challenging for me because looking at what I've spent money on would force me to hold myself accountable. And I have no problem doing that, but when I see that I've spent like $95 a month on goddamn salad, like Crystal, why? In the process of doing this, you will understand and discover a few things where your money is going. Money habits that you need to gain, such as prioritizing what is important and creating beneficial trade-off. And money habits that have to go, like excessive spending, right? Ask yourself, do I really need those lash extensions? Do I really need to Uber? Am I just being lazy? These are things that you will have to come to terms with and will force you to hold yourself accountable once you look at your bank account. A lot of people will just review where their money is going and use maybe, the app of whatever bank that you use as a tracker, and that may be helpful for some people. I know other people, like myself included, I like to write things down or at least create some sort of Excel sheet or use Google Sheets to really organize it and just personalize it. So for me personally, I like to write everything out, and it just makes things so much clearer for me, and I can make little notes and I just retain the information a lot better when it's written. I like to create a list of my expenses from most to least important. Now, I break my budget plan down into 3 different categories. The first will be living expenses. This includes your rent and utilities, gas, electric, Wi-Fi, all of that included. The next section will be reoccurring expenses, Metro card, toilet paper, if you have student loans, right? Credit card bills, things of that nature. Personal expenses. So this is subjective, people invest their money in different things. I'm just using myself as a prime example. So for me, it would be hair, nails. Those are just like personal expenses that we don't really take into consideration because in a way it is less consistent, but a lot of us do tend to, splurge sometimes or quote unquote treat ourselves. You should add that to your personal expenses list. So I've gone ahead and created a faux budget plan for you guys so you guys can get an idea of what the format actually looks like. I'm a visual learner, so I felt like this would be helpful. So let's say you're making $3,500 a month, right? And let's say you got lucky and you copped a nice 1-bedroom apartment for $1,300 in rent. In the first section of our budget plan, again, it's living expenses. So rent is $1,300. Gas, we'll say $20. Electric, $35. Wi-Fi, $45. Okay, so your living expenses in total will equal $1,400. Okay, so that means your utilities equate to about $100 on top of your rent. The next section is reoccurring expenses, right? So I've listed food, Metro card, and toilet paper. I don't know why I didn't put like a credit card bill, but toilet paper is just as, if not more, essential, right? I don't know. So food, $120, Metro card, $126, toilet paper, $10. Okay, so that brings us to a total of $256 for our reoccurring expenses alone. Next, we have our personal expenses. So I use myself as a prime example. This is subjective. Hair, $50, nails, $50, brows, $10, body products, $30. When you add up all of these expenses, excluding your rent, that would give you a total of $496 on top of your $1,300 rent, which brings us to a total of $1,796 a month that is being taken out of your $3,500 monthly wages, right? For those of you who saw that number and your stomach dropped, we are going to talk about the next step, which is the process of elimination. So hopefully this is going to make you feel a little better. I broke down my budget plan into 3 separate sections to determine what is essential for me and my lifestyle and my overall bank account health. Your personal expenses are your least important expenses. So that is the section that you are going to want to start cutting things out of. Before we really get into this, it's important to make small sacrifices for your long-term goals, but I also do not believe in cutting off habits cold turkey. It's usually very difficult to cut off a habit that you are, so heavily accustomed to. What I personally like to do, and I mentioned this earlier, I mentioned the idea of trade-offs. So, for example, I like to get my nails done. Call me bougie, call me high maintenance. I love getting my nails done. I like going to the salon and sitting in the chair and being pampered for 30 minutes to an hour. At the same time, though, that is an expense that I don't necessarily need. Could I easily just not go to the nail salon and do my nails myself? Absolutely. But am I going to not get my nails done again for an entire year? Knowing myself, probably not. So a trade-off in that case may be either going to a nail salon that is a little less expensive, or instead of going to the nail salon twice a month, just go less frequently, go once a month, and then for those next 2 weeks, do my nails myself. Just like with everything in life, you want to take small incremental steps that will get you closer to your goal and just keep you feeling like this isn't this massive change and that you're restricting yourself, because when people feel restricted, that's when they try to regain control, and sometimes we lose control when we're trying to regain control and we can lose sight of our goals. Trade-offs are important. You don't necessarily have to cut off things cold turkey in the beginning, especially. Over time, I may find that expense really just isn't necessary for me at all. Baby steps, guys, baby steps. It's kind of like when you create a to-do list, when you write it out or you have it on your laptop, checking off those boxes tell me not. It is so satisfying. And so when you actually have your budget plan like written down in front of you and you're taking a hard look at it and you just start crossing things off, you will feel so much better because you understand that this is just getting you closer to your goals. You'll be able to determine what needs to go, what really isn't essential, and non-negotiables, things that you actually really, although may not necessarily need, but just may need to keep you mentally or spiritually intact, right? I invested in a water filter. New York water apparently is like the cleanest water in America, but we have a rodent problem and I don't trust it. So I've invested in a water filter and that has saved me so much money because now I no longer have to go out and buy gallons of water. I can just fill it up, watch it get clean, and consume it and feel safe and save money. If you are someone that's looking to cut back, maybe think about taking the subway versus, driving. I mean, if you're able to do that, going to the laundromat versus, you know, dry cleaning. Now, I personally just go to the laundromat. It's like max $20, and sometimes at laundromats they offer like dry cleaning services that may be around the same price as how much it'll cost you to do your laundry yourself. It can end up being the same price, and that's something that I've noticed recently. Cutting back on electric use by unplugging all of your devices when you are not in the house or if you are not using them. So for example, if you are not using your AC during the day while you are at work, then you can unplug your AC. Just take it out of the socket before you leave, and that way you're saving yourself some money. Making your own morning cup of coffee, okay? So let me generalize this for you guys. Learning recipes of your favorite food and drinks and recreating them at home. It's a lot more sustainable. It saves you money, and honestly, you're in complete control of, you know, how it tastes at that point.